Many subscribers are experts in their topic area. They have career experience. They are looking for ways to turn what they know into additional income. Welcome to the Inside Strategic Relations newsletter, where we talk about influence and your ability to control a marketplace for your own personal gain or for career opportunity. And what I'm getting feedback on from subscribers is the fact that they have career experience, 10, 15, 20 years of career experience, and they're looking for ways to turn that experience into passive income, to turn that into career advancement, to turn that into the next level in their business. The biggest problem they face right now is that it's easy to gain this experience because you're in a career, but as you transition to retirement or you transition to a little bit more personal freedom, as you guys know, there's a lot of back to office initiatives. There's a lot of corporations that are moving their offices. In order to get that freedom, the one thing that keeps coming up, and maybe you've thought about this, it's becoming a consultant. Now, for a long time, consulting has been sold as being an independent professional. I personally do consulting through recruiters as a contractor or internal consulting as an employee with the larger Fortune 100 corporations I do. So, as a consultant, you're more of an independent thinking professional. You're leveraging your subject matter expertise in areas of the business where you can solve larger problems. This makes you more valuable. This increases your pay. This opens doors and opportunities. Now, it doesn't always open doors and opportunities when you're inside an organization, and there are some negative connotations of being the type of person who can solve problems independently, especially when you start having that corporate culture. We're not going to talk about that today. We talk about the corporate culture and the problems with that in other videos. The key here is that if you have a level of expertise that you've gained over the years, maybe it's your ability to optimize business processes, your ability to sell products or services, complex products or services, your ability to make executive decisions. As you grow in your career, there will be less and less opportunities to use those knowledge skills and more of that routine everyday activity. So how do we transition from being a subject matter expert in a topical area to monetizing that expertise either as a subject matter expert, as a consultant, as a go-to person, so that we can open up new opportunities? Now, here's the biggest problem you're going to face. You are a subject matter expert in a certain area. It could be industrial manufacturing. It could be managing large construction projects. Whatever your expertise is, think about that. You want to write that down. But one area that I'm confident that you're not an expert in, otherwise you'd already been doing this, is the marketing of consulting services. So that's what I'm going to help you solve here today, because there are myths and distractions that cause highly knowledgeable and expertise, people with a lot of expertise, to really waste a lot of time. Now, let me explain that, because I acknowledge how smart you are. I know that you have subject matter expertise, and you should make a list of the areas which you have experience, subject matter expertise, and essentially take your resume and expand it into case studies. We talk about that and we work on that in our workshop programs. But the key here is it's not likely that you'll have the skill of running a small business, marketing consulting services, and the overhead and administration necessary to maintain a successful consultancy. And here's the problem that comes up. When you're doing the actual consulting, it is very difficult to manage, which is sometimes a full-time job, the activities of marketing, selling, and booking that next assignment. Now, I've solved that in the past by working with recruiters. I have a network of recruiters. We've talked about that. That network of recruiters finds me 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 18-month contracts and assignments. I've worked with agencies for short-term assignments. I've worked with agencies for long-term assignments. I've also built a newsletter, products, courses, and other materials that I use to fill my funnel as a consultant to deliver the business development consulting that I do and the risk management consulting I do. Now, both of those things together is the sales and marketing of how to sell consulting services. And so I'm essentially, my expertise is laden in a very narrow area that helps me sell what I do. My point being, though, is that's 23 years of experience. That's not how I started. How I started is I went and got a job. And then on the side, I did consulting work, small short-term projects that didn't interrupt my main work. Now, I would take vacation and fly across the country to do a consulting assignment that very often had a gross value of more than my yearly salary. So I'd fly to California and do a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job that would be done in a 2-week period or less than 2 weeks because that's how much vacation I had. And I got overconfident because I could get these assignments here and there. And what I ignored was the fact that I had a steady stream of consistent income. So I'm working for one employer, and then I'm doing non-competitive consulting assignments that I gained through a newsletter in California, Florida, Chicago. I'd fly into a big city and do this work. The problem I had there and how I overcame this problem is very important to you because the more you focus on a buyer than what you have to offer, the bigger you can build a list that will give you the opportunity for those things to show up more automatic. But when they don't, we very often turn to, well, if I build a product, if I only had a newsletter, if I only had somebody in the office doing marketing for me, if I only had this or that, and it ends up burning up all your administrative overhead. Because I believe that I could go across the country and in a 2-week period, I'd get $50,000, and that was more than the $50,000 I was making as an IT professional. I was doing system administration work. And then I just decided I'm going to start my own company, because if every week I'm making $50,000 a week, rather than maybe $1,000 a week or $2,000 a week, then I'm going to be rich. I ignored, because of the excitement of the big fat check, the fact that I had full-time income coming in. So I had $50,000 coming in, whether or not I did any consulting assignments. And, whether it's $50,000 or $70,000 or whatever, this is like in the 1990s. So $50,000 today with inflation is what, $1 billion a month? I don't know. The point I'm making is when you get these short-term assignments, whether it's a week and you're making $10,000, or it's a month and you made $50,000, or a couple weeks and you made $30,000, we have to understand that it wasn't the activity that you're doing that made the money. It's the marketing of consulting services that made the money. So really, how much time did it take to get that contract? Divide it, so the dollars, divide it by the number of hours it took to get the contract. That's actually what you're earning. So what it turns out is that the newsletter I was writing on a regular basis was getting me consulting assignments. It would get me 1 or 2 consulting assignments a year, maybe $50,000 to $70,000 a year. So it was more than what I was making salary-wise. And by the way, I had some great mentors because I was only 1 or 2 years into my career experience, and my expertise during the dot-com boom was network installations and network design. However, I did it through other experts. I didn't personally have the skills of network design. I had the ability to match someone who wanted network design with a whole bunch of other people who had experience. So that $50,000 gross was not $50,000 in my pocket that I could spend, because maybe $25,000 went to the network expert, maybe another $10,000 went into travel and transportation, maybe $5,000 went into the retirement accounts and different things, and then what was left over at the end turned out it was nothing. I'd take 2 weeks of vacation, I'd have a wonderful experience, I'd do this transaction, I'd really only make the vacation time I had. And so I went and did a whole lot of work and had the vacation time, which I could have just relaxed. Now, you might be thinking, well, Justin, that does sound like consulting kind of sucks. It turns out, though, that if you have a systematic approach, which I learned later, you could have those assignments 3 or 4 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, even every month, have a 5-figure assignment. So how do we do that? That's the key thing. I mentioned a little bit is that we focus on the buyer rather than what you offer. This is very important. Now, you might be asking, what do I offer as a consultant in order to have a buyer? Because there's a chicken and the egg scenario here. And so what typical things do consultants offer? Well, primarily they trade their time for dollars. Here's the problem with that. If you want to trade your time for dollars, you could just go work for a company. And the company would take care of the overhead. It'd take care of your travel expenses. It would take care of your health insurance. It'd take care of all the other overhead items that sucked the majority of that $50,000 away. Again, it doesn't matter if it's $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000. You have a lifestyle that you're trying to preserve. And if you're getting 1 or 2 assignments a year, all that time you're on the beach is counting against that income. So you take your gross and you divide it by the number of hours in a year. That's your every hour rate. And if that hour rate is so low that you could just go work at McDonald's, then you ought to be working at McDonald's. The other challenge is the project you have divided by the amount of work that goes into the project, including the contributed overhead, very often makes the consulting work less lucrative than getting a better corporate opportunity. So what we need is products and services that position us as an expert to increase the probability of better career opportunities and consulting opportunities. Because even though I didn't make any money going off and doing this consulting assignment, I was able to justify the tax deductions associated with that $50,000 that came in order to have my business pay for my car, have the business sub my W-2 employment. So I got my W-2 employment switched to statutory W-2. That still fit within their accounting system, but it allowed me to write off the expense of my tools, the expense of my training, the expense of other things. So while my gross grew significantly, my contributed overhead was able to be better managed, so I had some kind of margin. I was able to get tax deductions to open up opportunities to increase my training, to increase my expertise, and then I was able to spend time with networking events. So it almost became part of a lifestyle to be doing the consulting activities. Now again, it's so easy to put up a shingle as a consultant. It's so easy to say you're a consultant. In fact, most unemployed people say they're consultants, but the challenge is making money. So how do we make money? Well, we have something to offer. So we find customers who want to buy our expertise or who would benefit from our expertise. So whatever your subject matter expertise is, who in the marketplace wants that expertise to solve specific problems? Now, if they knew they wanted that expertise and they knew enough about that expertise to make a buying decision, they very often would just hire somebody and solve that problem. But the problem is that they're not, because you're a consultant and you're not making any money. So what we have to do is understand who the buyer is, and then we need a system in place to educate them, connect them with you as an expert, and then ultimately position yourself for the opportunity. So what do we offer? We offer paid consultations, courses, coaching, and some other means of getting someone in the door. So it's consult, coach, or course. Now, a course could be delivered in a book, special report, or other medium. And we'll talk about that in other programs. The coaching itself could be that very short-term assignment that's like an hour on the telephone. I've made between $1,200, $300, $800 on a single hour phone call. Now remember, I gave you the example before. I would take a vacation from a job. I'd go work a contract. I'd get $50,000. The $50,000 gets distributed to everything that's necessary to do the job. And then I basically only made the money from taking the vacation time. When you do a telephone call for $1,200, for example, there's actually time that goes into setting up the call. There's time that goes into preparing for the call. And then after the call itself, there could be post materials like a report of findings, or a lot of times if I can make $1,200 on an hour call, because after the call I'm doing a commissioned report. I'm writing them a report of findings, and the call was basically to establish what do they want in the report, what do they want to solve for. So again, consulting, if you do just consulting and you're going around and saying, I'm a consultant in wastewater management, and you're going to people who hire people who solve wastewater problems or have wastewater problems, you're going to talk to a lot of people before someone says, oh yeah, we could probably hire you. And then they're going to see you as somebody who's needy because you keep showing up, asking for work. They're going to see you as somebody who's probably not an expert because you're readily available and you're somebody who's just kind of a commodity to them because they've got wastewater people. And then finally, you haven't positioned yourself in a way that they're chasing you. So they've seen you chase them, and they're not really sure, why is this guy, if he was such a big name consultant in our industry, why haven't I heard of him? So what we've got to do is we've got to produce products and services, and this can be done with just being available to answer questions, that develop a system to sift and sort prospects, to build up the demand for what it is that you have to do, so that when you go off on a 2-week assignment, or you take unpaid leave to go do a client job, or you do consulting within your own business, that you have an actual margin, an actual result. So that is the business of copywriting. The business of consulting is to actually make money. So remember, if you're doing the consulting itself, you may not be marketing, so it's hard to get that new assignment. If you're working full time and you're doing this on the side, it's possible that you're earning a higher gross, but without the structure of a business, you're not actually making any profit. And it's natural to believe that doing something for a long time, it's valuable because maybe you're currently employed, but that doesn't mean the marketplace wants to hire it. So what are some of the things that we can do? Well, you can hire a marketing agency. That very often costs a lot of money, but what would you have that marketing agency do? Well, they could help you write a book, but the problem with books is that they take a lot of time to produce, and they require a lot of effort. You can consult for a firm or an agency. I've done that. My margins are a lot better because the agency is taking care of the overhead. And so my billing rate might be $150 an hour, but they're billing me out at $300 an hour or $400 an hour. A lot of times it's a quick turnaround with an agency or a firm managing you, but the margins are very, very low. But again, you have some margins rather than what most people do is spray and pray. Most people get on social media, they write a bunch of content, they create a blog, they're doing a podcast, and they're just hoping somebody's going to listen, and they're going to hire them as a consultant. But again, remember, those folks out there, if they knew what it is that you do, if they had an idea of the concepts that you can teach or help them with, they would just hire an employee. They'd do a job listing and hire an employee. And the last, a lot of folks tell me, is where they're going to build their brand. They're going to go network, press the flesh. They're going to go to events and they're going to talk up what they do, not realizing that the people who can hire you really don't care what you do. They care, and here's the solution, they care about the results you can deliver for them. So here's the big takeaway. As a consultant, so you're going to take your subject matter expertise and you're going to turn it into a service and you're going to deliver it. Now, that service later can become a product, it can become coaching, it can become a paid newsletter. There's all these other things you can do, but when you start, the paid consulting offer that you have is give me money and we'll get on the phone. Now, how do you get somebody to get on the phone with you after they've given you money? They have to understand that they're going to get some kind of result. They're going to get clarity in their approach to solving a specific problem. They're going to identify key areas of activity that could be stopped, which will create a result. They're going to get on the phone with you after you've done an analysis or an assessment of their situation. They're going to get on the phone with you because they're asking questions that they could not answer otherwise. Does this make sense? Now, the rationale is if they could get on the phone and talk about something for an hour, and you're not trying to solve their problem in that discovery call. It's called a discovery call. But you're not trying to solve the problem there. You're just trying to determine if there's a good match here, help them define their problem better, help them hash out a little bit over the root cause. But if they can spend an hour on the phone with you for pay, then if it's a good match, if they're convinced that your subject matter expertise is what they need, then we can go for a week-long assignment. We can build out a statement of work. We can do a lot of other things. Now, you go do enough of these discovery calls, you're going to get the framework for products. It could be the five big mistakes people make when they're trying to solve X problem. That can then become content on your website. It could be a reason for someone to join a mailing list to learn more about the types of things you do. But you're never going to come out and say, I'm a business development consultant, because that has no meaning to anybody. I solve wastewater management problems. Whatever the expertise you have, nobody cares about the expertise. Nobody cares about the years of experience. Nobody cares about anything other than what that might do for the problems they face. So the big mistake that people make is when they start creating content and they start putting stuff on their blog, they're not focused on case study. Instead, they're focused on, hey, look at me, hire a consultant. We're going to help you. Again, the subject matter expertise is important, but the context of that expertise in solving specific problems for your potential client is even more important. Now, that's where case studies come in. So you're going to offer a telephone consultation or a full day consultation. Okay, because that fits into everybody's schedule. It fits whether you are an employee with bank holidays or other holidays, or you're a full-time consultant and you're trying to fill in the blanks for your otherwise full schedule, a consulting hour or a consulting day. Now, we're not trading hours for dollars. They have to understand that hour on the telephone, not in person, by the way, that hour on the telephone, that hour on Zoom is part of a larger methodology or process. So in my case, it's the assessment, it's the time on the phone, and then it's a report of findings. Now, how do we do that? How do we get positioned? How do we bridge from our expertise into the business of consulting? And we do that through a very simple model. We identify what it is, the service that we deliver, the thing that we call it. What do we call what we do? In my case, it's business development consulting. Then from there, we identify the results that we have created or can create for our clients. So we go through the resume and we say, okay, well, we solved this problem for the business, and we build a case study. A case study is a problem, situation, and solution. Okay, so one of the things that I can do for clients is increase their business cash flow. As a consultant, the biggest challenge you'll have is consistent cash flow, because as a consultant, you'll be doing work, but while you're doing work for client A, you're not filling your calendar with new assignments. So in order to get the result, which is increase business cash flow, you need to first have a business. So that is kind of the topic. There are certain topics that are necessary to give awareness, to know the value of the result, and the key to getting the result is your service. Now, you don't come out and say, if you want to get this result, then you need to hire my services. You'll say instead, if you like to explore getting this result in your organization, let's schedule a discovery call. Or here's a free report that gets you started. Or here's an assessment that we do to help clients with the same problem as you. The case study itself, problem, situation, solution, is an artifact that evidences your value to the prospect, while helping them understand how what you do is the key to their success, describing primarily the success of other clients, what success would look like if they implement certain procedures, but you never really say how to do the procedure. You describe what the procedure is, why it's important, how it connects to this particular buyer, and then what this buyer should do next. This is extremely powerful. If you're listening to this driving in a car, then as soon as you get back to the office, I want you to listen to it again and take notes. If you have an opportunity to take notes, the key thing to understand is that hierarchy, that your service is the least valuable thing to talk about, and that each service you deliver has certain results. And then the context and topical element of that result is really how you bridge the connection with a prospect and help them become a client. Now, what I like most about prospect newsletters or writing books or reports or other things is that you can do these incrementally, and it becomes a talking point in the conversation. But there's always the same services on the back end. If you're just starting out, it's going to be to buy an hour of your time under a specific methodology. So again, what I do is if for a paid consultation, there's an assessment, the paid consultation, and then a report of findings. So they're not paying $1,200 to be on the phone for me for an hour. They're paying $1,200 because I'm going to analyze their problem. I'm going to ask specific questions. We're going to discuss their needs, and then we're going to come up with a plan. Now, I just happen in 23 years have developed hundreds of plans for specific challenges and problems around the key areas that I can solve for. Now, in the past, those plans were based on network design, server infrastructure, secure communications. In the present day, it's about risk management, business development, and such. But again, my end user doesn't care how I categorize the service. What they care about is the results that they get, understanding that you can deliver the results because you need proof and evidence, and then some kind of artifact, because usually the people who find your written materials or your video or your podcast, they aren't final decision makers. So what can they take to their boss or to take to the board or to take to the person who signs the check to say, hey, we really ought to bring this guy in. We ought to really bring this gal in. The experience is there. The knowledge is there. They can describe the challenges that we face. We need to hire this person. And by the way, here's the book I purchased, and here's the report I read, and here's the case studies that they had. And now we're actually helping, because remember the problem is while you're doing consulting work, you're not filling your funnel. Now we're helping to fill your funnel because we got people out there that are advocating what you do. Those people are on a mailing list. They're on a newsletter. I don't really trust the regular readers of a blog. I want somebody on a mailing list. I want them in my contact manager. And now on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, sometimes even a daily basis, you're able to put additional valuable information in front of these people. It's not information as much as it is marketing materials that bring them to conclude, and this is again another writer-downer, to conclude that hiring you helps them to get the results that they want. That's the bottom line. If you are trying to pitch them on what you do, if you're telling them how you just hung your consulting shingle out and now that you're retired, you're going to start traveling the world as a consultant, and you haven't yet just traveled your Zoom meetings in your telephone, you're going to be grossly dissatisfied because, again, you're going to have this roller coaster income. You're going to believe, hey, I know all this stuff, but why am I not making any money? You're going to have self-esteem issues. You're going to have frustration and worry when you could have taken a systematic approach that started where you are today. See, you might want to be a consultant when you retire, but what's wrong with getting another $50,000 today? Learning from my lessons, structuring that in such a way that you could have gotten. So let's say I did the $50,000 assignment and I got the money from my vacation time, but I also was able to tag on a 2-day trip in Los Angeles, which this is what I started to do later. I'd go out I went out to Santa Monica to do this consulting assignment, and then I would always pad a couple days on it so I could have some time to relax and really enjoy the vacation, because what I figured out is that taking a vacation from my job to go do this assignment was structured all the wrong way. I never got to have the actual vacation. And I didn't really boost the gross income and the tax benefits and stuff, but my net in my pocket was not very good. Now I get a much better net in my pocket, which allows me again to invest in the business, to invest in the streams of cash flow, and then invest in someone taking my body of work and turning it into a report, turning it into a book, and turning it into these other things. So I can take the transcript of an hour-long telephone call, consultation. I can take the results of the 5 or 10 assessments. I can take the results of 5 or 10 reports of finding. The customer doesn't know that they're all bound to the same subject matter expertise, and then I could either hand that to somebody to turn into a book, or I could turn it into a book, or I could turn it into a newsletter. Of course, without disclosing the specific problems your clients had, because you do want to have confidentiality. But does this make sense to you? Can you see how you can turn that expertise into consistent and regular revenue, but it's not the typical way people say. It's not just hanging up the shingle and magically there'll be a line at your door. You have to actually find the hungry buyers, educate them about the big problems that they have, associate those problems with some of the key things that you can deliver as far as results are concerned, and help them conclude that they need to be talking with you. They need to be working with you. It's more positioning than prospecting. It's more putting yourself in the right place in their decision-making process than it is to chase down prospects. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this has been a way of looking at what do you offer as a consultant if you want to convert your subject matter expertise into passive income, into even active income or new career opportunities, and kind of the approach to think about that product and really what you have to do, because consulting, once you get this figured out, is very rewarding, and that reputation that you build is a tangible way to show people your value. And so whether you get consulting assignments, like I'm not complaining about that $50,000. I didn't make a very good margin, but it meant career advancement because I gained experience. It meant more training because I had the tax deductions or I had the structure. When you have questions about this topic, again, I'm Justin Hitt from Inside Strategic Relations. Visit our website at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Ask your questions. I know this has been kind of a double hitter episode, but I want to make sure you understand how this works, because otherwise consulting can be very frustrating, because again, you have subject matter expertise, but not in the business of being a consultant. So bottom line, folks, you transform business relationships into profits by using systems. One of the systems I described here is going to put you in front of buyers in a hearable way and ultimately start you out with that couple hours on the phone, maybe a day rate consulting, and then you'll start building up that library that's necessary to do these other things that folks talk about. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next podcast.